This happened around 3 years ago. I still get goosebumps when I think about it. It was about 9 o'clock. I had just gotten home from a hard day of work when my doorbell rang. I sighed and looked through the peephole of the door. A woman in her late 30s was stood there. I thought, oh great, this must be some religious solicitation, door-to-door salesman, something like that. Something I wasn't in the mood for sure. Yes? I said as I opened the door a couple of inches.
Excuse me, but is this Mr. Kimura's house?
She asked politely. Yeah, that's my name. It says so on the postbox, so anyone could have read it in the lobby. But I was still a bit surprised. I was tired and I couldn't be bothered to deal with her, so I replied, No, sorry. No Mr. Kimura here. I'm afraid you have the wrong place. I began to close the door. The woman pushed against the door before it shut, looked me in the eyes, and said,
Are you being honest with me? It's you, isn't it? Don't try and hide from me, Mr. Kimura.
She screamed the last part as she pushed the door as hard as she could. I was in shock. She was now in my apartment. I was in total panic mode. I remembered I just kept saying, No, 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 no. I regained some composure, and I pushed her back towards the door.
Get off me! I know it's you, Mr. Kimura. Mr. Kimura, it is you! I found you!
She called out. It was getting more and more escalated. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I had no idea what to do, so I shouted, If you don't get out, I'm gonna call the police. The woman went silent, glared at me with a puzzled look on her face, and turned and left my apartment without any more drama. I double-checked the door was locked and the chain was on, and after much stressing out and worrying, I eventually went to bed. As you might have guessed, I didn't sleep much that night. The next day, on my way home, I saw a younger woman waiting in an alley, in a kind of blind spot. She looked to be a high school student. Since she looked a bit like the woman from last night, I guessed it was her daughter. And then I thought for a second, I'm getting paranoid. Until she noticed me and started running towards me. She began shouting,
Mr. Kimura, I've wanted to meet you for so long.
She had something in her hand. I think it was a small fruit knife. She was shouting and running at me with a knife in her hand. It was horrifying. Thankfully, I wasn't too far from my apartment. I ran in and locked the door.
Mr. Kimura, come outside. Come outside, Mr. Kimura. If you don't come out, I'll kill you.
I frantically dialed the police. The phone was ringing as I dashed around my apartment, checking my windows were locked and the curtains were closed. I flipped the lights off too. The police answered, and I explained the situation in a panicked voice. They tried to calm me down. They said that they are sending someone, and they will be here in about 2 minutes. They asked me to make sure the doors were locked. I went to the window to peek outside. I could see the daughter trying to climb up the wall to get to my window, while the mother smiled and stared at me from below in my garden. Then she started looking around the garden for something. That's the last thing I saw before it closed the curtains. My guess was that she was looking for a rock to smash my window. Suddenly, something started banging against the window. I guess the girl had managed to reach it. She was screaming,
Mr. Kimura, I want to meet you.
I was cowering in my bathroom. I frantically searched for a weapon to defend myself with, and all that was available was my toilet brush. I was gripping the handle tightly, with my back against the wall, shivering with fear. After about 5 minutes, I heard,
Oi, what are you doing?
It was a new voice. A male voice. Could it be a police officer? It sounded like a police officer. I heard my doorbell ringing.
Mr. Kimura, this is the police. Are you okay?
I felt an awesome sense of relief wash over me. I went with the police to the police station. I wanted to find out why these horrible incidences had happened to me. I wanted an explanation. The police confirmed that the woman was under arrest. It transpires that she had committed the same crimes against another Mr. Kimura. I was also informed that her daughter is now being cared for by another family member. I don't know which Mr. Kimura they were looking for or what he did to them. I had never seen her before, and it worries me to think that one day they might come back. I have considered changing my name. And of course, after all this, I moved house.
This happened about 10 years ago. I was a student at the time. I was attending a local university while living alone. My apartment became a hangout for all my new friends. I usually left it unlocked. It wasn't uncommon to find my friends in my apartment when I got home from work. I know that that's a really dumb thing to do, but I grew up in the countryside, and I was used to not locking my door. I didn't care at the time. I remember it was autumn. All the leaves were brown, and it was starting to get colder at night. I was on my way home from my part-time job. When I arrived home, I found one of my friends asleep in my bed. I was pretty shocked and annoyed. I gave them permission to come and go as they pleased, and I was happy to have people around, and that was fine and all. But you can't sleep in my bed without my permission. That's too much. I have a sofa in my room for my friends to crash on. I never specifically said that it's where they should sleep, but isn't it obvious? Oh well, I thought. Don't let it annoy you too much. I'll let him sleep for a little while longer, while I set up the sofa bed and get ready for bed myself. I looked at my friend in the bed, and he had the covers pulled all the way up over his head. I couldn't make out who it was. I could only see the top of their head. I started eating the dinner I'd picked up from the convenience store, and I called out to my guest. Is that you? Or is it you, Tachi? No answer. I got in the bath. Let him sleep a little bit longer until I kick him out of my bed, I thought. By the time I finished my bath, got dried and changed, my friend still hadn't moved. Now I was annoyed. Oi, time to move now. I've set up the sofa bed and I want my bed back. Time to move, bud. I said as I approached the bed. As I called out to him, my friend pulled his head all the way under the covers. Whatever I said, he just kept pulling the covers over his head more. He was acting weird, violently tossing and turning in the bed. I stared at my bed for a while. Something didn't look right. You know the shape of a person in a bed. This seemed a bit larger, a bit bigger than one of my friends. It was so weird. It was as if someone was hiding in the bed. None of my friends would do that unless they were playing a prank. I half expected them to jump out at me, but it had gone too far now. I called out my friends' names again. No response. I started to think this wasn't a prank. I was getting anxious. My hands began to tremble. I felt a strange new sense of fear I hadn't experienced before, or since. My lower back went ice cold. I summoned up the courage to confront whoever was there. Oi, why aren't you saying anything? I called out. A small part of me still believed that that was my friend in the bed. A very small part of me. At the moment I drew closer to the bed, I heard the same moving sounds beneath the covers. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. This time, I saw the forehead and the eyes of the person in the bed slowly emerge from the covers. The eyes. They glared at me. They were wide and filled with hate. They were burned. They were staring straight at me. I'll never forget those eyes. I felt faint. I knew as I stared into those eyes that they did not belong to one of my friends. I wasn't even sure if they belonged to a human. After that, I can't remember much at all. I just remember being in an absolute state at the local convenience store on the phone to my friend. My friend rushed to the convenience store to join me. We called all our friends to make sure it wasn't any of them. Who the hell was in my bed? I called the police, and they came to the apartment to check it over. They called back and couldn't find a trace of anybody in the apartment. I always make sure to lock my doors and windows now. I shudder when I think about how long I was alone in the same room as that person. This happened in my second year of university. I was on my way home from my part-time job. I took a detour that night, and I got home a lot later than usual. There was a badly written sign that said the elevator in my apartment block was under repair. Ugh, great, I thought. I staggered upstairs to my apartment on the 5th floor. I was exhausted. When I got to the 5th floor, and to my door, I opened it and stepped inside. Something felt wrong. Do you know what I mean? Something was out of place. I really don't know how to explain that feeling. Immediately I hit the light switch, but the lights wouldn't come on. I flipped the switch over and over again, but still nothing. I felt fear well in the pit of my stomach. I didn't know what to do other than investigate, so I headed for the living room. I groped along the walls of my apartment in total darkness. When my hands felt the cold steel of the kitchen sink, I stopped, frozen in fear. It was at this point that I saw someone stood in the middle of the living room. The person was thin and tall. Faint streetlight shone in through the living room window. I couldn't make out the person's face or any distinguishable features or what they were wearing. All I could see was their long, thin silhouette. It was someone stood in the middle of my living room. I thought I would scream or panic or something, but I couldn't do anything except stand there. I couldn't move. The person in the living room slowly started to move towards me. They dragged their feet slowly. Sweat began to run all over my body. My eyes widened in horror. And then, it was like my body suddenly jumped back to life, like I managed to get control of it again. I threw open my front door and legged it into the corridor of my apartment block. I hit the button for the elevator repeatedly. I panicked as the button didn't light up. I had completely forgotten that the elevator was out of order. I ran as fast as I could down the stairs. By the time I hit the ground floor, I was panting. The elevator began its descent to the ground floor. What? How? The doors of the elevator slowly opened. I did not want to see whatever was about to get out of there. I ran as fast as I could to the nearest convenience store. I couldn't bring myself to go back to my apartment. I couch surfed at friends' houses. This went on for a fair few weeks, or nearly a month. I can't remember. Eventually, I went back to my apartment with some friends to get my stuff and to move out. Nothing was stolen or broken or out of place. Everything was exactly how I left it. It was so strange. I managed to get another place in a different area. I can't stand dark rooms now. I keep it torched by the entrance at all times, and I leave a light on whenever I go out or go to sleep. It was a horrifying experience. I never found out who that person was. I often wonder what could have happened to me, but I try not to think about it. I had just moved into my own place, not long after graduating from high school. I went to study in a technical school outside of my hometown. It was the first time that I had lived by myself. It was there that something very creepy happened to me. My mum helped me pick the apartment. She wanted to make sure it was a safe place to live. I'm the sort of girl who's lived a sheltered life, and my mum is a worrier. You're so close to school, everyone will be able to see you, and you'll be in the public view, she said. Sometimes her overprotection is annoying. I had my own anxieties about moving in, but overall, I was excited by the freedom of having my own place. Several days later, my TV arrived. I ordered one. Not a very big one. It just took one person to deliver it. The delivery man brought it to my room. I was like, oh shit, what am I supposed to do with this? Actually, looking back on it, it was pretty embarrassing. I didn't know how to wire in or set up a TV, and I still don't. The delivery man looked at me for a moment and asked politely,
Do you need some help?
I was so grateful. I invited him in. He seemed like an expert, and the TV was set up and installed in no time at all. I blurted out, "Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much." I was really grateful for his help. The next day, the doorbell rang. I went over to the peephole and had a look. The guy who installed the TV was there again. "What are you doing here?" I wondered. A panic stirred up inside of me. I thought I'd just ignore it. I pretended to be out. From then on, he rang the doorbell every day. I was really getting frightened now. He was there every day. It was horrible. Sometimes I knew he was there without him ringing the doorbell.
I know you're in there.
I didn't say a word. I just kept ignoring him. I mean, what else could I do? He was really creepy and he wouldn't go away. And I was in there all by myself. I was just praying that he wouldn't start kicking the door down. After a while, it was silent. I was wondering if he went away. So I crept over to the peephole.
Ah, you can open the door now.
He said with a smirk. After this incident, I went to one of my college friends' apartments as often as I could after college. I'm sure I was inconveniencing my friend. They kept asking me what was wrong, but I really didn't want to talk about it, so I just dodged the question due to my meek personality. I wanted to go back to my room, but I also wanted to take my friend with me just in case. I didn't know how I would react if that guy was there. When I finally explained what was going on, they told me that I was overreacting. And she said that my reaction to him installing my TV might have been what spurred him on. Maybe he interpreted my gratitude as affection. But a man like that should know not to bother a young woman living alone so much. He shouldn't do that. After a while, he went away, and I haven't heard from him since. But I do get frightened every time I hear the doorbell. Please, be careful living alone, ladies.